So Jeff, we definitely want to talk about some other news and notes, but one of the things I've been excited to talk about for a bit with you, a bit of an evergreen situation, if you will, is something that happened with John Cena over the weekend. I don't know if you saw this, but he had a big showing at the Clash in Paris. He was victorious over Logan Paul, and he had a quote that said, "Everyone knows I don't pick my opponents. I'm at my best when it's the open challenge. Like, wow, this is the revitalization of John Cena. I always want to be a platform for people to give their best." And John Cena says he does not have enough dates left to face everyone who is influential in his career, which is why he is using some of their special moves in his matches. Of course, a lot of people noticed that we saw a Styles Clash and an End of Days and some other moves that he sort of tipped the cap and paid homage. Back in the day, is that sort of thing something that the boys would have to run past somebody before they did it in the ring? Like, would they run it past the booker or promoter? Would they ask the other wrestler? Or is this not move stealing? This is a tribute. So maybe you don't ask the guy, you ask the promoter. What was protocol for something like this?
I mean, to me, I don't think there's, oh boy, Conrad, because I think so much can be made about this. And what I think the general misunderstanding of it all, it is on a situational basis that if you take, and I'm just using an opening match guy, use the Styles Clash versus John Cena using the Styles Clash, we're not even talking about the same set of circumstances. And it kind of goes all the way back. It's your stature, it's your position in the business, and that's where I think you can get really sideways. That if we'll call it a guy who's working their way up the card might use another guy's finisher can be looked at a little different, as opposed to if you've got equity and you've got longevity and you've been in the business and kind of built your stature and trust within the community on certain levels. Like, I don't think there's a finish out there that John can't or shouldn't or wouldn't use, because at the end of the day, it's John doing it.
Yeah.
It establishes I mean, not to completely compare it to the music business, but when a Paul McCartney does a cover of a hit song, that's Paul McCartney or whatever legendary artist. It's more or less the same in that it's stature in the business. And I think that, oh my God, they use the DDT as a high spot. Well, that's kind of the evolution of the business too, in that, a cutter, whether in just the transitions of how it's gone, the RKO, and there's different things. And there's, look, the pile driver. You can kind of look at different set of circumstances of guys who got it over, who tried to get it over and didn't get it over. I just think it's all on a real situational basis, as well as who's doing what.
Let's talk a little bit about, if you were going to do sort of a farewell tour, like John Cena was going to do a farewell tour. And for whatever reason, you found yourself in a similar circumstance where, man, I had like a bucket list of guys I would have loved to have hooked up with one more time as a way to say thank you for all the magic and memories we created together. But I won't have the dates in order to do that. So I'm going to pull off some of their moves to pay tribute to our feud together and pay homage to my friends. And we asked you to list 5 moves that you might borrow if you were in John Cena's shoes. And you listed number 5 as Jerry Lawler's pile driver. How does Jerry Lawler and the pile driver come in at number 5 for you? What about that is so special and magical to you, Jeff?
Well, to me, I grew up watching Lawler, and at the end of the day, um, you know, before he became my dad's business partner, he was, a hero. I was sitting on my couch when I watched him slap Kaufman on the David Letterman show. And, you know, at the end of the day, Lawler, and this goes way back, you know, pull the strap down, but, you know, the pile driver being outlawed or, you know, you can't illegal. But man, it was game, set, match when Lawler hit it, and Lawler, the executing kind of like an Orndorff or Lawler when they were in their prime, you know, jack a guy up, and it was a quick sit out with some, it was just not kind of, and look, as Lawler got older and depended upon opponents, but you kind of go back and look at certain Dundee when he would pile drive Dundee or the Kaufmans were great, and then he went to the hospital and all that. So Lawler's execution, but timing more than anything. He had great timing with the actual move as well as where to place it in the match. So Lawler's pile driver, to me, and that's kind of an emotional attachment as my childhood and the memories obviously grow and grow and grow through the years. It was always really special.
You know, we know that these days it is special if someone breaks out a pile driver, especially in WWE, because we know it's been a banned move forever and ever. But way back when, did you always perceive it as being a finisher just because of Jerry Lawler? Or when you saw other wrestlers use it and it wasn't really a finisher? I'm just curious how that sort of evolved, because I do think it's interesting that now it's enjoying a resurgence. You know, there was once upon a time where you see pile drivers in every match, and now just a regular pile driver. Now they're doing stretcher jobs with it in WWE. So the way people feel about that move has certainly changed, right?
Well, and to me, I always look at it, and this is, I said this Sunday over at AML, and I mean this, and I've said it on here, Conrad. I love this business, but I never ever want to lose sight, and I don't think I really have. I was a wrestling fan long before I put on the tights. That, like, I loved it. I got 5, you know, there's 5 of us, 4 siblings. I'm the only one that really was bit by the bug and loves it to this day. So when I look at it through the lens, and I can remember, you know, I'll call it half smart to the business. You know, Dundee do a pile driver, the Fabulous Ones maybe do a pile driver. In my mind, this is how I calculated it. That's why I never really got, you know, TNA people would come to me and, hey man, I'll talk to you real quick. So and so and so and so. They kind of did this move. It's kind of this guy's finish or whatever like that. And I'm like, I at times I would maybe have a little sidebar like, just shut up. But I would be diplomatic. Okay, thanks for telling me. The reality is, in my mind, this is how I think a lot of the fans go. Hey, Dundee can throw a pile driver. Steve Kern can throw a pile driver. Dutch Mantel, but it ain't Lawler's. There's only one Lawler pile driver. It's almost like a Nolan Ryan fastball. Everybody can throw in their 90s, but Nolan, his fastball hits different. But I mean, that was to me that there's only one guy who can put a guy out with a pile driver. And in my mind, it was Lawler.
When you were working with Lawler in Memphis, I'm talking early days of Jeff. And in those days, or did you wait and debut what we've sort of nicknamed here on the show, the Venetian blind gear? Did you have that in the WWF, or were you using that in Memphis before you went up?
I used it for about, gosh, I'm probably getting it wrong, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, about a year before I went to WWF. Not long.
I guess I'm asking, did you ever drop one of those straps before a pile driver as a tip of the cap to those Memphis fans who knew about Lawler's deal?
I want to say the first time I ever did it was against him, and he told me to do it.
To drop the strap.
Yes.
And just that got a big reaction.
Huge. But he knew how to place it because, yeah, at the end of the day, he had to have dropped his, and he bounced me around and all this. I think he maybe would have been in the 60-minute through. It was one of those, and then we got over it, and he pounded me anyway. And he's like, all right, man, I'm going to walk away. Take those straps off. Okay.
As a young buck, you're in here with your wrestling idol, and you're getting to do his move, and now you get to do the signature call beforehand, like the signal to the fans, and you hear the crowd come with that noise. That's got to be something burned in the memory of your mind.
It's the art to me. Those moments will always be the art of the business. Like, there is an art to everything, and I know people just kind of gloss over it today. I had a conversation, gosh, not long ago, Connie, doing cardio next to a guy. I'm talking like this, and they were just kind of talking about, and I gave him an example of the sportatorium, because he was asking about, okay, I'll get into this. The production value of professional wrestling now gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But he said the emotion, he said, I can remember as a kid when I would hear Eye of the Tiger, because there was a time that Lawler came out to that, different music cues. You know, when you see, let me think. I mean, look, when Flair's opponents would go to the ring, or even if it's Cena's opponent, you know, go to the ring, and you know, you transition out of the opponent's music, and then you have 5 seconds go by, and then 10 seconds go by, and then 15 seconds go by. The whole world knows the first 7 bars of identifiable music. Here it comes. But if you kind of build that anticipation, then man, that's a story in and of itself. And so that's where, you know, having the brilliance of a guy like Lawler and others, that you know where to place things, because silence is so valuable, positioned in the right places. And a lot of times people just completely overlook it this day and age, but the timing of that. And so, you know, on those kind of moments when he's like, all right, drop the straps, he knew exactly where to put it. But that is to me, that's the art. That is why I believe, or one of the reasons, not the only reason, but I think that's one of the things that people, I'll call it the non-wrestling fan, don't really understand. Like when you go to it, and if you're dropped off, if you lived in Mars and you dropped in, and you're going to go to whatever, All In, and you hear a certain theme music played, you go, just the emotion that's created just with some music.
Number 4 on your list of Jeff's top 5 finishers he might use to pay homage to former names or influences in his wrestling career. I'm shocked by this one. Steve Austin's Stone Cold Stunner makes the list.
Well, so I when I was asked earlier this week, it really wasn't that I would ever use them. I would never, you know, I'm the shits at doing a pile driver, and the more I have coming up in there, I looked at what do I think were the most, these in my mind are the top 5 finishers that meant the most, that to this day, you know, obviously people age out, but I just think they no matter who does, and I know pile drivers and somebody's going to come along, but in my mind, nobody, like 100 wrestlers could do a pile driver, but there's only one Lawler. All kind of guys can do stunners. There's only one Stone Cold. And it's because when those anticipation moments would build, and he'd finally get Vince, or he'd finally get Rock, or whoever it may be. Like the whole world, that meme that goes around, or that little clip goes around when I'm strutting across the ring and he spins me around and gives me the stunner and then struts. When people saw him, like music hit, they didn't have to think at all, oh, Steve's going to come down and probably going to punch and Jeff will roll it. No, they knew exactly, we're about to see Jeff get stunned. That's when a finisher's over.
We've got to do number 3. This is going to be no surprise. You know, we all know how fond you are of AJ Styles, and of course, you're going to pick the Styles Clash, synonymous with the early days of TNA, and we even saw John Cena dust this one off against Logan Paul. Why does the Styles Clash make the list of your top 5 finishers, Jeff?
I just think it's very hard this day and age, and I'm going back 20 years, to come up with something new that has, I'll call it, a lot of variables that you do. And you know, you think about AJ sticking the guy, you can opt out there. AJ can get the guy up, he can slide down going into ankle submission or leg submissions. There's all kind of backdrop out of it. There's all kind of variations that you get into it. But when AJ hits it, you know that's why, you know, I'm in a lot of ways, I'm proud papa, so proud of AJ, because man, he came up with that, thought it through, protected it in the early days, and we all did. That was his finish. Nobody else would even come close to touching it. And it to me, the kind of the building blocks of 02 to 7-8 years of TNA, that to me is where the foundation of the Style Clash was built. And then to kind of see it come to fruition in Japan, independent scene, and then WWE, when AJ walked through the curtain on his debut WWE in Orlando, the world knew what his finish was. You didn't have to go establish that. And so that's where I just think his finish is really cool.
Let's do another one. When we think about all-time great finishers, you have coming in at number 2, Jake Roberts and the DDT. Man, once upon a time, I think you used to say, what does it stand for? It stands for the end. And for Jake Roberts, man, that DDT, that was it every time. Why does it make your list?
To me, and the old words, often imitated but never duplicated. Can you think of a move that, and I know Jake's 6'4", there's a lot of things that go with Jake and his DDT, but I believe that his execution of his move, and it rightly so, but because a lot of people hit DDTs and variations of DDTs, but Jake hits Jake's DDT so special, and I think that's why. Yes, they protected it. I mean, they really protected it in the 80s. And excuse me, Jesus, protected it in WWF, and then on into actually WCW. But the formation of that and Watts and just as how he built it, Jake got his move over, and just I don't think there's really a talent that doesn't know. I'd be surprised. That's a good question. Hey, where'd the DDT come from? I think everyone knows that's Jake's original move.
I'm really surprised to hear what you have as number 1 on Double J, Jeff Jarrett's top 5 finishers. Number 1 is Hangman Adam Page and the Buckshot Lariat. I'm not criticizing the pick. I mean, fans go bananas for this. What do you think it is about that combination that resonates so well with fans or even yourself? Why do you like the Buckshot Lariat as your number 1 top 5 finisher?
So I'm gonna kind of go back to the setup. Like, imagine Jake as whatever, and he can have a numerous setup moves, but when Jake would pick a guy up and stick him, you kind of knew, here we go. Same with AJ. When AJ would stick him, there's some anticipation there. Lawler, yes. What was my fourth one? Anyway.
You had the pile driver, the stunner, the Styles Clash, the DDT, and the Buckshot Lariat.
The stunner kicking the gut. That's the kind of setup. I think in my mind that when I kind of look I had fun, coming up with the top 5, but when I sat back and really looked at, okay, the Buckshot Lariat, that's just a stiff ass clothesline. Our man JBL can throw a stiff ass clothesline. Stan Hansen can throw a hell of a stuff. I mean, there's a lot of guys through the years that it's a clothesline. But I think Hanger's ability and how he has built that, there's 1,000 ways to set it up. It's literally the guy taking a bump in the ring, and Adam could go to any 4 ropes outside and set it up. And you can have managers, you can have opponents, there is so many variations. But I'm going to go back to the anticipation and the build. You can build it in All In London when he stepped outside and kind of did his shake and got the people rumbling. Again, the people stood up. They knew they were about to see it. So I think the setup is equally as, or maybe more important, or just as important. It's definitely important. And the variations to do false finishes out of it, I think, gives so much value to it. So just the fact that he, gives space and distance and setup and all that, Conrad, I just think it's very, very trademark, and he's done the work to get it over. And I just think in 2025, can you name a finisher that's more over?
That's interesting. We want to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
What would you put as the most over finisher today and why? Drop a comment below here on YouTube and we'll take a look at those next week. The honorable mention for you, Jeff, which I thought was interesting, is the Fritz von Erich Iron Claw. And this is one that, well, I've had a lot of fun with busting our mutual friend Pondwater Dave's balls about. He is a huge Von Erich mark. He loves the claw. I'm surprised. Maybe I shouldn't be. I know you love nostalgia and you have history in Dallas and you were in the Sportatorium. Why does the claw make the list for you, Jeff?
So when I sat back and really tried to drill down, Conrad, I'm so freaking pissed if my internet's messed up. So I apologize, folks out there, but I got 5 bars and I'm looking at it. So it's for another argument. But anyway, Conrad, I looked at the finishers and looked at, and you guys didn't ask me, but you know, I said, all right, let me think of one in the 70s, then 80s, then 90s, then 2000s, then in kind of in the 2010. I don't think this decade's over, so 2020, but Hanger started this 6-7 years ago and he's really developed it. But when I thought through the 70s, it popped in my brain, hell, a damn movie's named after this. But I'm going to give it much more validation in that Fritz and his look and his demeanor and his character and his persona, and you know, if you get a chance, folks, just to kind of watch some clips, and I don't know, and Pondwater, I'm not sure what his real thoughts are, but I don't want to call it the simplicity of it. I'm just looking at Coach Keith Morrison saying, Connie hates the claw. But man, oh man, it was so over. And I can't really think of a finish that had more impact in multiple generations, because Fritz gives it to his kids and Kevin and Carrie and Mike and David, you know, those guys. But in Dallas, if Fritz got you in the claw, it's over. And you know, I'm sure, you know, I thought through Flair and Dusty and different real super, like the 70s mega stars. And I just was trying to think in all the different territories and eras, and Bruno and Andre and like the real mega stars of the 70s. And the Conrad, maybe that's a talking point. What other 70s superstars had a finish that was as over as the claw? Do you have a 70s, just 70s only, a favorite?
No, I don't. I mean, not to be funny, but I wasn't watching wrestling in the 70s, so I don't even know.
Yeah.
You know, it was a different style, it was a different era. But when we were talking about current, you know, the most over move currently, we're seeing the same answer over and over from most of our listeners, RKO. And if I would have answered from the 90s, I would have said the Diamond Cutter for sure.
Yeah.
But in the modern era, I could still say the RKO. But I think you might be on to something with the Buckshot Lariat. I'll admit I didn't think of that as a big time finish, and I don't know that it would have been on my list. But who's using it in the WWE? Logan Paul, their top guy, their main event. So you've got 2 of the biggest and brightest stars on each channel using that move. We want to hear from you guys. Let us know in the comments, what is the most over move today? And what would you put in your top 5 finishers of all time? Briefly, I want to talk about some of these moves too. Like, there's lots of people who've done pile drivers. Why do you think some pile drivers stand out more than others? Like, we pretty routinely hear about Lawlers or Paul Orndorff's. Most people agree those are 2 of the absolute best pile drivers. What did they do that everybody else doesn't do? Is it just the use of psychology and what leads up to it, or is it the actual execution of the move, Jeff?
Both, but I'm looking at spinning toe hole. That's a good one. Mandible claw. I thought about that one, but you know, I don't think you can. It's mandible claw as Mankind versus the Sacco gets a little gray. I thought about he's definitely in there, big time, and shout out to all the comments. I love this, but Conrad, a pile driver executed, and I'm just going to say that the sheer execution is there's a little jump And then there's literally, you got to kick your feet out. You can't just kind of fall backwards. I just think that it truly is execution. Same with Jake on the DDT. They execute it so well. And I think that's a massive reason why we're talking about how big they got over. I mean, Steve in his stunner, lots of guys can stun, but Steve, big old Texan, throw the boot in there. But I mean, he'd get into you, and I mean, that's what I'm saying. He's laying right on his ass, but he would jump up. Obviously, guys took it differently, but all in the execution. But it is as equally as where to place it in the match as well. And look, all of them. Let's just be real clear. The promoter has to get behind you, and you got to win with that bad boy. It's that simple. If it don't work, it never gets over. So you have to have at the very top of the list a promotion that gets behind you to get it over.
Well, yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, take a look at how, the WWE established the Stone Cold Stunner and WCW established the Diamond Cutter. I mean, those became, the moves were super over. Like, I would even argue that the Diamond Cutter got over before DDP got over. Like, so, with the audience, they were ready for it.
Not today, but there's a unique story on how DDP created the Diamond Cutter.
I do want to take just a minute and ask you, when we're thinking about, again, we kind of asked this about trying to get over on social media earlier, but if you're starting your career in 2025 and not however many years ago it was, and you were going to pick a different finisher, how important would it be that you pick a finisher that you can do out of nowhere, like a Diamond Cutter or a DDT or an RKO? And how important would it be that this is a move that I can use on anyone, whether it's a big guy, it's a smaller guy, because I do know that there's some moves, like I think about Razor Ramon's Razor's Edge, and that'd be tough to do to some bigger guys. And I know he did it to some bigger guys, but even like Lex Luger's rack, like, man, that looks good on some guys. It doesn't look as good on the big guys. And obviously it's a big visual, but if you were using a best practice, what would be more important, that you can do it to everyone, or the suddenness, you can do it out of nowhere?
I mean, at the end of the day, and we, Adam Priest is our buddy, and I think the world of him, but I think more than this, the world of his talent, folks. If you put him in the music business, he's a bullet with a rocket strapped on him. He is going places in a big kind of way. But to your point, you can't have Adam do the Razor's Edge. You have to match your persona and your talent and everything that goes with it. I mean, they came to me in WWE, and but I don't even know who came first, but I'm just, because when I cut my hair and this and that, and look, the figure four is what, and that was just, I mean, when I went there, I was a heel. Heels didn't, quote unquote, really have finishers. Like in Tennessee, drop kick was my finish starting out. Hey, I beat many guys on Saturday morning doing a drop kick. And as the finisher world really got going, I was a heel in WWF, so I didn't, quote unquote, have that. But then there was that kind of transition. Everybody needed a finisher. And so I wanted one that I could do to everybody and do a semi-simple setup and a lot of variations out of it. That's how in my mind, the stroke. But I don't think you need to hit it out of nowhere. I think you need to have the ability to execute whatever you're going to do spot on and do it somewhat, no matter if your opponent's 6'8" or 5'8". You got to do it somewhat the exact same way to everyone.
Well, let's talk about doing the same move the same way to everyone. Specifically, I want to spend a little time talking about the Styles Clash. And I know I first saw that on TNA, gosh, over 20 years ago. But about a decade back, it did feel like there were a few people who got injured doing that move. Now, I don't pretend to know anything about wrestling, but I believe one of the first things that guys learn in wrestling, especially when they're falling on their back or they're taking a flat back bump, I feel out of place even using these terms. I think they're supposed to tuck their chin to make sure they don't accidentally hit their head, knock themselves out, and all that sort of jazz. And I think on the Styles Clash, when you're taking that move, it kind of goes the other way, where you're not supposed to tuck your chin. Is that the long and short of it? Or how did some of these guys erroneously take? I'm not I guess what I'm trying to be clear on is I'm not saying AJ gave it wrong, right? Or what happened with those?
I know we both feel this way. I believe Frankie Kazarian is one of the best in-ring guys to come along. I mean, there really wasn't anything Frankie couldn't do in the ring.
Yeah.
And he's still performing at a high level. But Frankie took a bad one night, and I think it goes back to our instinct is tuck the chin.
Yes.
And I can remember a young Allen, and I don't want to call him AJ these days. He was a young Allen to me. And I mean, he didn't call me sir, but hey, Jeff, look up, look up, look up, look up. I mean, that's it. Adrian Lionheart, God rest his soul, Scottish superstar, who has passed away, but he was one that got his neck broke from it. And it literally is a set of circumstances that finish, you go against what you're taught.
So that's really it. It's your natural instinct. You're trained from day one to tuck your chin, and you do it instinctively, and you accidentally get your neck jammed as a result.
Yes.
So just in a loud and clear voice, AJ Styles is not dangerous, and neither is the Styles Clash. The guys accidentally hurt themselves.
Yeah. It's just that simple. Yes. I mean, it is knowing your trade. It's I mean, oh God, I'm gonna go. But anyway, yes, those guys that work on those big ships. I just saw something on X the other day, like dangerous jobs. I mean, if you don't know what you're doing out to sea, you don't get second chances. And what we do, I'm not saying it's not near as dangerous as that, but it can be very dangerous. So you better know what you're doing.
I want to quickly put a button on this segment, but I want to ask if you were trying to figure out what finisher you were going to launch with in your newfound career that you're starting in 2025, not way back when, would you use a submission move? Because I feel like more and more, think about how many wrestlers used a sleeper hold as a finish, or the $1 Million Dream as a finish, or the figure four, or the sharpshooter. It feels like as time has gone on, there's less of that. Do you think that is because of the suspense and the production element of the way wrestling is presented? Or do you still think that a submission is just as viable as a move that leads to a pinfall? I guess I'm trying to figure out, if you had your druthers, would you pick a finish with a pinfall or a submission?
If I'm a young guy?
Yep.
Oh, it is not even remotely close. It's a 1, 2, 3, because that's fan engagement. You can get 1, 2 kick out, and you can do all of that with submissions, but you better have a story. You better have an opponent. You better have, like, when I think of like really over submission moves, and to me, Daniel Bryan was the absolute best at whether, and I mean, there's so many different variations that Bryan can do, but he would work that in that. But, Kurt's ability on his ankle lock and variations and this and that, all this, but you got to really understand how to tell a story, not only yourself, but your opponent. When you do a pinfall submission, it is much easier to write the narrative and the story and everything that goes with it. And to me, I think well-rounded talents should have both, have a submission finish and a 1, 2, 3. But I'll just say this, and I'll button this: start with your pinfall submission and work into your submission finish, but get the pinfall over first.
SaveWithConrad.com.
My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California. I came to Save with Conrad because I've heard Conrad talk about how he helps people all the time save money and the best route to go for getting some mortgages and finances done. And having heard so many different testimonials in the past, it made the most sense to go this route. We were in the market for a new house and we wanted to know what we could afford. So we spoke with Steve and then Diane to get through the pre-approval process to see what we could afford. And then once we were able to understand that aspect of it, that was when we were able to shop around for a house to get a mortgage through Save with Conrad. Everybody on the team was great. Everybody really explained everything fully to where it was more in like layman's terms to where I could understand it as someone not in the business or having shopped around for houses too many times. So being able to understand every step of the process and talking with everyone on the team about that was really, really helpful. And it made me feel really confident that I was going the right route. I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. I know that sometimes people look at it and they go, oh, they're based in Alabama. What could they help me with? But I'm out here in California, and they were able to square everything away and get things done really quickly, as opposed to sometimes even people out here don't move as quickly as the Save with Conrad team. So everything was really well done, really efficient, and I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California, and I was able to get into my dream home with SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender. SaveWithConrad.com.